My name is Evelyn Ross. I'm 62 years old. Charleston in late October smells like wood smoke and sugar. Lauren wanted to host Halloween dinner this year. Something festive, she'd said. Her house in West Ashley was all orange lights and cinnamon candles, every surface decorated with little pumpkins that matched her manicure. I brought a peon pie, the same recipe my mother used to make. The table glittered with wine glasses and laughter. Lauren's husband, Greg, told stories from work. My son Aaron scrolled through his phone. Half listening, I sat at the far end, smiling the way mothers do when they're not sure they belong anymore. We were halfway through the roast when I mentioned softly that I'd still like to discuss the small loan from last spring, $15,000 for the home repairs. I'd kept my voice light, trying not to sound like an accountant. Lauren froze, fork in hand. "Mom," she said, her tone bright but edged, "can we not do this now?" I nodded, but she wasn't finished. "You really need to stop asking for money. It's embarrassing." The words landed with a sharpness that made the room tilt. Even the candle flames seemed to tremble. Greg cleared his throat. Aaron looked down and someone laughed too loudly at nothing. I felt the sting rise in my chest, quick and familiar. I wanted to explain how my savings had gone into her credit cards, her car, the new kitchen she'd called an investment, but the explanations had worn thin years ago, so I smiled instead. "Of course," I said quietly. "You're right." Conversation resumed like a tide covering something ugly. Lauren poured more wine. Someone complimented the centerpiece. I reached for my glass, steadying my hand so it wouldn't shake. The porch light outside flickered through the window. I watched it glow against the night, steady and warm. And just like that light, something inside me steadied too. I folded my napkin, placed it beside the plate, and let the laughter move around me like a current I no longer needed to join. By dessert, I knew exactly what I would do before the night was over. The drive home was quiet, the kind of Charleston night that hums with crickets and the rustle of moss against street lamps. The air smelled faintly of salt and old magnolia. I kept both hands on the wheel, replaying my daughter's words like a skipping record. "Stop asking for money. It's embarrassing." Each repetition carved something clean through the noise in my head. For years, I had explained, excused, and softened every boundary until there was nothing left to protect. Tonight, that softness felt like rot. When I reached my small house near the marsh, I didn't bother turning on the lights. I hung my coat, placed the leftover pie on the counter, and stood there for a long time, listening to the clock in the kitchen tick toward midnight. Walter used to say, "Boundaries protect love, Evie." I'd forgotten that. Or maybe I'd been too afraid to live by it. The digital glow of my phone lit the room as I opened my banking app. My thumb hovered for a moment, then moved with a steadiness that surprised me. Message to the bank. Message to the bank. Remove all authorized users from my credit cards and freeze any shared cards where I'm the primary. I opened the second account, the one Lauren was listed on as an authorized signer, and removed her access, then moved my balance to a new individual account. I did the same for Aaron. Each action felt like exhaling after holding my breath for years. When it was finished, I powered off the phone and set it on the nightstand. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was alive. I slipped under the quilt Walter's sister had made, the one that still smelled faintly of cedar, and closed my eyes. Sleep came easily, quiet and whole, as if I'd finally earned the right to rest. The sun rose pale and gentle over the marsh, the kind of Charleston morning that carried more mist than light. I woke earlier than usual, refreshed in a way I hadn't felt in years. The house was quiet, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the creak of the old wooden floor under my slippers. The first buzz came as I was grinding coffee beans, then another and another. My phone face down on the counter vibrated steadily like a trapped insect. I let it. By the time I poured my coffee, the notifications filled the screen. 12 messages from Lauren, 3 missed calls from Aaron, and 1 text from Greg that simply read, "Please call her. She's panicking. I sat at the kitchen table, cradling the warm mug between my palms, and read the first one. Mom, my card was declined at Target. What's going on then? Mom, this isn't funny. I have bills due today. And finally, why are you doing this to me? I placed the phone face down again and turned toward the window. The sunlight touched the potted ferns on the sill, their green catching gold at the edges. I reached for the watering can and moved through the small rituals of my morning, pouring water, slowly trimming a dry leaf, wiping, the counter clean. Aaron's message came next, sharp and impatient. This is cruel. Mom, you could have warned us. Cruel. The word lingered, sour and absurd. For years, I had given without warning checks, transfers, emergency payments that drained my savings while they promised to make it right later. I had been generous to a fault. Now, doing nothing was apparently an act of war. By noon, 23 missed calls blinked in red. The house stayed silent, except for the soft clink of my spoon against the cup. I breathed in the quiet and let it fill me. For once, peace didn't feel empty. It felt earned after Walter died. The house became too quiet in a way I hadn't known quiet could be. It wasn't the soft, peaceful kind. It was the kind that echoed, that made the clink of a teacup sound too loud. I tried filling the space with small things: a new lamp, a stray cat that refused to stay, endless television reruns. But nothing covered the silence. He left behind. People meant well. They dropped off casseroles, sent cards, called once or twice. Then the sympathy faded, and life resumed for everyone but me. The kids visited that first month, bringing flowers and polite smiles. Lauren cried on the porch, holding my hand like she was the one who'd been widowed. "Mom, we'll take care of you," she'd said. And I believed her. 2 months later, she called again, this time from her kitchen. Something about an unexpected expense, a credit card bill she couldn't manage. Just until things get better, she promised. It was such a small favor to ask, and I wanted to be useful again. I wrote the check without hesitation. Then came Aaron. His hours had been cut, and he needed temporary help until his next paycheck. Another check. Another reason to stay connected. Helping them made me feel less alone. Like Walter's steady hand was still guiding me through them. But months turned into years. Temporary became routine. I paid down balances, wired money, covered their mortgage late fees. Lauren remodeled her kitchen, the one I'd paid for, and sent me photos of the marble counters with hearts in the caption. Aaron bought a new car for work reliability. While I kept driving Walter's old sedan with the worn leather seats, the numbers added up quietly, like rain collecting in a gutter. $30,000 gone before I realized it, and that wasn't even counting the cards. Every dollar disguised as love. I told myself I was keeping the family close, that this was what mothers did. But deep down, I knew I was afraid of being left behind, of becoming the kind of widow people only visit on holidays. Each check felt like an apology for still breathing, for asking nothing, for existing without him. It wasn't until that Halloween night, when Lauren's words cut clean through the years of denial, that I finally saw the truth. I hadn't been helping them stand on their own. I'd been funding their comfort so I wouldn't have to face my own loneliness. And now that silence in the house didn't feel so empty. It felt like a warning I'd ignored for far too long. It was just past 9 when I heard the car door slam. Through the lace curtains, I saw Lauren crossing the front yard in a sharp blazer and high heels. Her expression set like stone. The air outside still carried the damp sweetness of last night's rain, but she brought a storm of her own. "Mom," she burst out the moment I opened the door. "You humiliated me." I stepped aside, letting her in. The scent of her perfume filled the hallway, expensive, floral, a smell I now associated with guilt. She didn't sit down. She stood there, arms crossed, cheeks flushed. "What are you talking about?" I asked quietly, though I already knew. "My card got declined at the grocery store in front of people I know. You couldn't even warn me." I folded my hands together, feeling their steadiness. I didn't think I needed to. I said, "You knew the money wasn't yours." Her mouth fell open. "You're unbelievable. After everything I've done for this family, you turn around and embarrass me like this. Those were gifts." I walked to the side table, pulled out a small folder, and laid it on the kitchen counter. "No, sweetheart," I said softly. "These are the messages where you said you'd pay me back by spring." Every single one. She glanced down at the printed pages, then looked away, jaw tight. "You're twisting things. Families help each other." "Love without respect isn't help," I replied. "It's dependence, and I can't keep pretending it's something noble." Lauren's eyes glistened, but she blinked the tears away before they could fall. "You're making a mistake." "Mom," she said, her voice trembling between anger and fear. "Maybe," I said, "but it's mine to make." She turned sharply, heels clicking across the porch. The gate slammed hard enough to rattle the wind chime Walter had hung years ago. I stayed by the door long after she left, listening to the faint echo of her car fading down the street. The tears came, hot and waiting. But somewhere inside, something stronger told me not to let them fall. Aaron called 2 days later. His tone was measured. Rehearse the voice he used when he wanted something to sound reasonable. "Mom, can we all sit down and talk? I think we've gotten off track." I agreed, mostly out of curiosity. We met at Lauren's house that Sunday afternoon, the same dining room where this all began. The table looked just as it had, centerpiece polished. Candles lit, but the air felt colder, like the warmth had been replaced with strategy. Lawrence sat at one end, arms folded. Aaron stood by the window pretending to check his phone for a moment. No one spoke. Then Lauren began, "Mom, we're worried about you. You've been acting different since Dad passed. Different how I asked." Aaron turned, leaning against the wall. "You've always been generous, understanding, but lately you've been distant, defensive. It's not like you." Lauren nodded eagerly. "Maybe you should talk to someone. A therapist." "Maybe. You've been through a lot. We just don't want grief to make you hard." Their words floated between concern and accusation. Perfectly balanced. I looked at the faces I'd raised. So sure, so practiced in the language of gentle manipulation, and realized how long I'd mistaken their entitlement for love. I folded my napkin neatly, smoothing the fabric under my fingers before I spoke. "I appreciate your concern," I said evenly, "but I'm not angry. I'm just done paying for everyone else's mistakes." Aaron frowned. "Mom, that's not fair." "It's perfectly fair," I interrupted softly. "Fairness is all I've been asking for." Lauren's eyes widened, but she didn't argue. The silence that followed was thick and fragile, like glass waiting to shatter. I stood, pushed my chair back, and picked up my coat from the rack. "Thank you for inviting me," I said, my voice calm and polite. "Next time, let's meet somewhere neutral." Neither of them moved as I walked to the door. I felt their eyes on my back, searching for guilt, waiting for me to falter. But I didn't. The door closed with a gentle click, sealing the quiet behind me. For the first time in years, I didn't look back. That night, the house was quiet, except for the soft hum of the ceiling fan. I sat at the kitchen table surrounded by half-sorted papers, old statements, receipts, and folders I'd been meaning to organize for months. The lamplight made the ink look older than it was, faded and tired. At first, it was small things that caught my attention. A charge from a boutique I'd never been to, a dinner reservation in Atlanta, a hotel stay under my name dated 6 months earlier. I flipped through more statements, the unease growing heavier with each page. The pattern was clear: luxury purchases, travel expenses, online orders, not mine. I kept reading until the truth pressed itself against me so plainly it took my breath. Lauren had been using my card for nearly a year, for a long moment. I couldn't move. I stared at the numbers, the signatures, the neat digital confirmations that had my name on them, but her life behind them. All those nights she'd called to check on me, all those cheerful texts, they hadn't been affection. They'd been maintenance, keeping the bank of her mother open. A dull ache filled my chest, not sharp like anger, but deep and hollow. Betrayal doesn't shout, it settles, quiet and certain. I reached for my phone, called the bank, and reported the fraud. My voice stayed calm as I confirmed each transaction, each account to be closed. When it was over, I stepped outside to the porch. The air was cool, carrying the scent of the river and faint jasmine from the neighbor's fence. I took Walter's photo from the table by the door, the one of him smiling beside our first house, and set it on my lap. "You were right, Walter," I whispered into the dark. "Boundaries protect love." The words didn't hurt to say. They felt like a door closing, gentle, but final. The law office sat above an old bookstore on Broad Street, its windows fogged with humidity from the river. I'd never been there before. But the brass plaque on the door, Patricia Vance, attorney at law, looked steady, like someone who didn't waste words. Inside, the air smelled faintly of paper and lemon polish. Patricia was in her 50s, short hair brushed neatly back, her manner practical but kind. She offered coffee I didn't drink and asked me to start from the beginning. I told her everything: the loans, the silence, the humiliation, and finally the credit card statements. She listened without interrupting, taking notes in tight, even handwriting. When I finished, she looked up and said, "You have every right to protect yourself. Mrs. Ross, family doesn't excuse fraud." Her words startled me. They were simple, almost gentle, but they cut through years of hesitation like a clean wind through a closed room. We drafted the documents together, a formal letter demanding repayment along with a report of unauthorized charges. Patricia worded it with quiet precision. No threats, no anger, just the truth presented in black and white. When I signed it, my hand didn't tremble. The letter went out that Friday for days. The phone stayed silent. Then one evening, as the sun dipped behind the marsh, Lauren finally called. Her voice shook through the static. "You'd sue your own daughter." I held the phone carefully as if it were something fragile. "You already sued my heart," I said softly. "I'm just collecting damages." She hung up without another word. The sound of the line going dead was strangely gentle, almost merciful. A month later, a notice arrived from Patricia's office confirming the agreement repayment scheduled through automatic monthly transfers under a signed agreement. No apologies, no dramatic reconciliations, just quiet. Legal order. I placed the letter on the kitchen table beside Walter's old watch. The house felt still, but not empty, as though something heavy had finally lifted. Outside, the evening light stretched across the yard, soft and golden. I made tea, poured it into my favorite chipped mug, and stood by the window, watching the last of the day fade. Justice didn't feel like triumph. It felt like breathing after years of holding my breath. A year later, the air in Charleston carried that same mix of salt and sweet decay, the scent of fall pressing gently against the porches. Halloween night again, though this time the house glowed with a different kind of light. I had baked 2 pecan pies, one for the neighbors, one for the table, and arranged a few small pumpkins along the steps. The dinner was simple, just a handful of friends from the book club. My next-door neighbor Nora and her husband, who brought over their famous gumbo. The conversation flowed easily, laughter soft and unforced. No one asked for anything. No one took more than they gave. The clatter of plates and gentle voices filled the house the way peace fills a room that's waited too long for it. When everyone left, I stacked the dishes, humming to myself. The night had cooled, the kind that makes you pull a shawl around your shoulders. I was wiping the counter when my phone buzzed on the table. A text from Lauren. "Final payment sent. Can we talk for a moment?" I just looked at it. The words were plain, careful, nothing dramatic, no apology, no demand. I thought of the woman she'd been a year ago, all sharp edges and entitlement. And I wondered if she was finally starting to see herself clearly. My fingers moved slowly over the screen. In time, I'm proud you followed through. I set the phone down, turned off the kitchen light, and stepped onto the porch. The air shimmered faintly with children's laughter up and down the street, their costumes flashing under the glow of porch lanterns. I lit mine, a small hurricane lamp Walter and I had bought at a flea market decades ago, and watched the flame settle steady behind the glass. Across the yard, Nora waved as she handed candy to a little girl dressed as a butterfly. I waved back, smiling. The night felt whole, quiet, earned. I leaned against the railing, the lamp warm beside me, and breathed in the soft hum of life returning to itself. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like someone's mother, a widow, or rescuer. I just felt like Evelyn Ross standing in her own